Rangers fans, welcome to Liberty Blue, the essential New York Rangers podcast. I'm Andrew Chelney alongside Nick Zararis. And Nick, we are through the first week of the season. 2-0-1 start. Not bad.
I made this comparison last week, and after watching the Oiler-Flyer game last night, I still feel like it rings very true. The same phenomena we see in football where the first month is everybody kind of doing what they would do in the preseason. It's the same thing in hockey now, because nobody plays their full team in the preseason. Even if they do, it's only for one or two of the games. We have too many preseason games, and the rosters are too big. And I understand teams don't want to play their good players in those preseason games, because you see what happened in that trio of games between Ottawa, Toronto, and Montreal, where guys who are fringe NHLers are taking runs at important players. So I understand why teams don't play their full rosters, but we're paying the price for that right now as fans, because there's no better encapsulation than the Utah game last Saturday, where there was no defense played, a ton of penalties, a ton of really sloppy, just outright bad hockey. And that's because nobody's played with each other. It is really hard to manufacture game environments in non-game situations. You know, as intense as you want to make practice, as much as you want to make non-game activities, you're never going to be able to recreate that environment. And for guys who are trying to get familiar with new partners, the Schneider and Trouba pair is off to reasonably decent returns. Mancini and Jones in the process of feeling each other out. You know, there are gonna be some lumps. They are in the early stages, and that was a perfect encapsulation of what early season hockey looks like now, because nobody takes the preseason seriously anymore. Really bad transition play, a lot of penalties. I mean, same thing in the Oiler game last night. I mean, 7 penalties against the Flyers, who have maybe 5 talented players there. We're in the early stages. Give it a month, and then I think you'll start to actually see what resembles good hockey. But right now, the Rangers are still very much in that feeling it out process, trying to get up to game speed. The good thing for them is they have enough talent where when they play teams like the Penguins, Detroit, they can just beat them on talent. Again, that's not necessarily a great habit to get into, but it's enough this point in the season.
How do you fix the preseason issue, if there even is a fix? Because you see it, it's not just a hockey problem. Every single major sport has this issue where either no one takes the game seriously at all, except for those fringe guys that are trying to formulate some kind of storyline for them to make the team, or it's just guys that they're there, they're going to do their cardio for the day, and then that's kind of it. And that leads to these kinds of games like Utah, like you mentioned, where everyone was not really sure where to play defensively without the puck. I mean, Clayton Keller on the overtime goal had 17 years to score because he was wide open in front of Shesterkin, and he scored a very a great goal. I mean, it was a beautiful goal, but why was he so open for so long? Why was there nobody within a 5-mile radius of this man right in front of the net? What's going on? How do you fix that? I don't know if there is
in a contact sport. I don't think there is a way. You're never going to get guys who want to take hockey or football seriously, because it's just not worth the risk. Yeah. It is not worth the risk for these guys to be going full speed in games that don't count. I know there was a little bit of conjecture. I know LeBron wrote about it, that there's eventually going to be a push to try and condense this even more, where we're going to get rid of some preseason games and add more to the regular season, which I don't think helps the overall problem of the regular season feeling very diluted and meaningless, where you can basically predict 13 of the 16 teams that are going to make the playoffs before the season starts. But at the very least, I think having smaller training camps and preseasons will incentivize teams to dress closer to full rosters, because you're not going to invite 80 people if you only have 4 or 5 preseason games to try guys out. You're going to get as many guys in as possible, and you're going to give your guys reps, because that's the thing right now. A lot of these guys, they just need game reps. And I know you're going to say, well, Nick, these are professional hockey players. Yeah, you go from playing hockey every other day for 8.5 months like the Rangers just did, to no organized hockey activities other than occasionally skating or shooting on the ice. I know some people play in summer leagues, but that's not nearly the competitive environment. You do that for 2.5 months of no competitive hockey. You play 3 preseason games if you're a good player like Panarin or Trocheck, and then you're expected to come in full tilt first game. It's a little bit unrealistic, and I think the context matters in these performances so far. Now, If they're still this sloppy a month from now, then it's a different conversation. But right now, you can tell, especially on the back end, Fox is dealing with a new partner. Schneider's dealing with a new Schneider and Trouba both dealing with new partners. And then Jones playing on that third pair. All of these guys are still feeling each other out. And defense is so much about feel. As much as we want to talk about it being a matter of following structure, so much of defense is making decisions and split-second decisions, and you can't get a feel for what your partner wants to do until you play with them consistently, because everyone's different and everyone reads plays differently, and they read board play differently, and they read pucks differently because everyone's a different skater. And to mitigate their differences in skating, you have to know what your partner wants to do. And without that feel for what your partner does, it puts you both in an uncomfortable situation where you have to take that extra beat to think about, well, if he goes here, I go here. If I go there, I go there. And I know they're professional athletes and they do that on a level that the rest of us don't. Like, I have to manually think, okay, if I'm playing Madden, drop back, A's not open, B's not open. They're able to do that instinctively where they don't actually have to think about it. But until these guys get familiar with each other, they're all going to have to take those extra beats, and not even familiar necessarily. I would say just up to speed more than anything. Because right now the games are really sloppy. They're very open-ended. There's a lot of space. And as the season goes along, you think about playoff hockey where there's not an inch to breathe, the polar opposite of what we're seeing right now.
Yeah, October is the month for sloppy hockey. Like that, there's kind of no other way to put it. It's just not the prettiest. There's a lot of mental mistakes, a lot of miscommunications. There's a lot of people that are like, oh yeah, that's right, I do that. Oh yeah, that's right. This is the timing for that. Like there's a lot of that. Oh, now I'm remembering again. Because yes, they're pro athletes, of course, but when you don't do something for 3 months, like you're not gonna have the exact same timing and the exact same, game speed, memorization, and the utility that you would get if you were in February in the middle of a season. These are things that are going to happen in October. That's just that's what it is with this kind of thing. So, given that, for the Rangers to, the Utah game was kind of a tire fire in terms of defense, but like for them to come out against Pittsburgh and dumpster them completely, that was impressive to see. Not only, the 6-0 scoreline was fine, Shesterkin played well, but it was the way that the Penguins found one spot to work in, and that was around the net, where the Rangers kind of didn't know how to handle that for like the first 10, 15 minutes of the game, where the Penguins got the cycle going, they were around the net, and they were getting a lot of chances that way. And then as soon as the Rangers were like, oh yeah, we should do something about that.
Wait, I'm goated.
Yeah, we should stop that. They not only stopped that, the Penguins had nothing. The Rangers completely skated circles around them, and like that was, especially for a first game standpoint, that was really impressive to watch. And then you go to Utah, and then you play. It was a defense, so I don't know what you would call that experience of a hockey game, but it was
slop.
It wasn't the cleanest form of NHL that we've ever seen. But this is what October is, and the thing that really separates great teams from everybody else is that everybody plays October poorly, really, for the most part. There's no one team that's like, you could win a bunch of games, but the thing about it is everybody plays sloppy hockey. What separates great teams from bad teams is a lot of great teams will win despite their slop. Like the Rangers got a point from that Utah game. I don't know if they deserve a point from that because that defense was really bad. They destroyed Pittsburgh. They beat Detroit. They're going to play them again tomorrow. And a lot of teams that don't have that kind of talent threshold will play that same style of slab hockey because it's October, but they just won't have the extra screw it, I'm going to go do it myself type of player that will score that goal that's needed. For the Rangers, they have so much talent that they could, I don't want to say they could get away with it, but like they can,
they absolutely can get away with it. They did it for an entire season 2 years ago.
They can kind of work through their issues in October while still out-talenting teams and collecting points on the way.
I mean, that's kind of the imperative right now. Yes, you want to start banking points as early as possible to mitigate any external factors, whether it's injuries or cold streaks. The more points you bank, the earlier, the better, the more room you give yourself later on. But you want to start building better habits as soon as you can. And I think as the lineup starts to get healthier, I know Lindgren is within the realm of possibility for a week or so from now to start resuming. He's been cleared for no contact stuff. I know VZ's still a few weeks away. I think the closer we get to a healthy lineup, I think that'll help as well, especially on the back end. As much as the back end has opportunity, like I said before, Schneider and Trouba have played reasonably well together. They've won their minutes as far as possession. As much as we want this to be a group that's going to win on defense, we know that's not the case. We know that the Rangers, as individually talented as their defensemen are, for whatever reason, there's some block as far as making the pieces fit together. So it puts a lot more responsibility on the guys up front. And the two storylines coming away from the first three games as far as forward goes, I think the third line, as we said on our season preview episode a few weeks ago, is as advertised. They have the puck a ton. Yeah. They put a lot of pressure below the goal line. They have two players in Kakko and Cuylle who are both physical and able to win puck battles, use their size, use their, in Cooley's case, their physicality to win pucks, to sustain zone time, and really just wear down other teams. And that's something that both, as you said before, the Rangers trying to find ways through this sloppy period, this always works. If you want to spend 45 seconds to a minute and a half in the other team's end, and even if you only get one or two looks out of it, if you just make a team play defense for a minute and a half, you tire out their goalie, you tire out their defenseman, you tire them out, they take a penalty, or just those guys go back to the bench, hands on their knees, a little tired from having to play active defense for that long. And this is something the Rangers desperately need, is multiple ways to attack. We have seen the Rangers offense go cold at times, especially at 5-on-5, because they're so reliant on transition play of getting a 2-on-1 or a 3-on-2, getting one or two looks off of that rush, and then immediately the other team is sprung to go back the other way because the Rangers have three guys within 5 feet of the net mouth. They have two defensemen back, and the other team's forwards are able to fly the zone early and spring going back the other way. The Rangers can do that against most teams. Against, I would say, 20 of the 32 teams in the league, they can get away with that most nights, and they're going to win a lot of games. But having a multifaceted offensive approach in the way this third line does, it's something we've been clamoring for. And the fact that you have Chytil there now as opposed to Wenberg, who was there last year in the middle of those two, it gives them another dynamic. It makes them a little more explosive, and it just deepens your lineup. You know, they have 11 different goal scorers so far through 3 games. That's encouraging. The fact that Chytil looks good and at game speed for somebody who only played, 15 games all of last season, he looks like he was able to hit the ground running, and that matters. And it's a long season. And I know there's going to be points where they probably juggle the lines just for the sake of juggling the lines later on if the offense goes cold. But if this is your third line and you're getting reasonable enough results from Riley Smith, then you're just going to sit here and wonder, well, what's the ceiling here? Is there a world where we need to go get another winger so we can push Cuylle down to the fourth line and then really try and have 4 functional forward lines? Or are we going to keep with what we've got and maybe we don't need to take a big swing because we feel we have 4 lines that are all capable of driving possession? Of course, we're 3 games in, but when your goal is the Stanley Cup, your expectation is to make the playoffs, and how good can we realistically be?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a secret or a surprise to say that, if the Rangers are in a playoff spot at the deadline, they will make trades to make the team better. That's not breaking news to anybody. But I do think one of the key things to highlight here is that Laviolette continues to not trust his fourth line. And I think, when you...
Saturday's a little bit different because Edstrom got in the fight, and that's a little bit different.
But that, but even you disregard that, like the time on ice, the other, on was it Monday? Time on ice on Monday for the fourth line wasn't too much better either. It was a couple more minutes, but they
were chasing the game. It was a tie game, so I understand the point you want to make.
What I'm saying is that you want Laviolette to have, especially in this type of situation where if the Rangers are truly a Stanley Cup contender team, a true Stanley Cup contender has 4 lines you can set out on the ice at any situation. I mean, obviously, if you're down a goal, or down a couple of goals, you might want to send out, double shift your top line, whatever we have to do. But in an ideal situation, you want your head coach to have complete faith in all four lines to be able to go out on the ice and at least not impact the game in a negative way. So I think that is it's only been 3 games, and as you mentioned, I mean the Utah game was a little wonky and things like that, but I do want to see Laviolette have a little bit more faith in his fourth line, whether that be Edstrom, Brodzinski, and Carrick, or Rempe, who got 340 in the game against Utah. You got to play your fourth line guys more than 3 minutes. Again, the Utah game is a little bit of an anomaly, but the fact remains that they did that in the playoffs. You send out Rempe in the playoffs. He gave him 4 minutes, and you play 11 forwards essentially because he's on the bench. Like, you did that in the playoffs. That didn't work, and now you're going to do that again. Like that. That's the kind of thing that I want to see moving forward. Is either Laviolette give that line a little bit more of a leash and kind of just see how they can handle it, or I would think at the deadline they're going to tinker with that.
I think once VZ comes back, we will have a better idea of what the vision is. Because right now, I think I think Carrick is stapled there. I think he's definitely the 4C, at least in the interim. Maybe
he doesn't look bad either. Like he's
been fine. He's reasonably fine. He's fine. Right. Edstrom, Brodzinski, and VZ and Rempe all competing for 2 spots. I think VZ, when healthy, is absolutely getting one of those spots. And then that's where I think you're more inclined to see what exactly the Rangers are thinking. Because right now, and we know this, coaches don't like to change the lineup after a win. They won on Monday, so they're not going to take Rempe out, even though you probably make an argument maybe you should. And ultimately, I think they're going to end up sending him back down to the AHL because he needs to play. At the end of the day, he's waivers exempt. He's 23 years old. He's going to benefit a lot more from playing 12 or 13 minutes a game in Hartford than he is being a spot starter getting 5 minutes a game in the NHL. I understand everyone wants him to play. If he's here, he needs to play. That's the end of the conversation. We have been saying this since the game against the Devils he got ejected 10 seconds into. If he's going to be on the NHL roster, he needs to play at least 10 minutes a night. He's only eclipsed 10 minutes in a game 2 separate times in the NHL. One game in the Panther series, and then a regular season game against the Blues. And that game against the Panthers, he only got over 10 minutes because it went to overtime, and it got deep into that first overtime period. Game 2, where they won on the Gaudreau goal. With that said, I don't think the Rangers feel this is particularly pressing because of the way they're able to make the money work because of the salary cap. Mm-hmm. I think they definitely want to have Rempe around, but eventually, and granted, it's the second week of the season, they are going to need to make a decision there because I think Edstrom has shown you a lot more. I think Brodzinski has shown you a lot more than Rempe has in the time, but being that Rempe doesn't play enough, he doesn't have a ton of opportunity to show you what he actually is. And as much as everybody wants this to be fun and to work out, this is not, as Gerard Gallant so eloquently put it, and everyone who covers the team defended him saying, this is not a developmental league. And if you can't trust the guy to play more than 4 minutes in a game against a bad team, I don't think he's ready. And there's nothing wrong with not being ready, but you need to get ready. And if we're not getting a guy ready, he's not ready. It's a really simple paradox.
At the end of the day, if you're a player with room to grow, like Rempe does, like you're not, we're not talking about a 33-year-old player. Like this man is still in his early 20s. When you are a player of Rempe's age, and I don't want to say caliber, but somebody that has room to grow, you're not going to get better at the game watching it on the bench or watching it in the press booth. You just won't. Like, Rempe played 3 minutes in that Utah game, and essentially he pretty much got a free front row seat to the game. Like, yeah, he played 3 minutes.
He won a face-off.
Yeah.
He won a face-off.
Look at that. He won a face-off. I mean, I couldn't win a face-off in the NHL. I'm a free agent. Maybe Nick, you can.
He had 3 hits and he won a face-off in his 340.
That's called impact, baby. But, essentially he got a front row ticket to the game for free. And he got a jersey out of it. I mean, he can't ask for much more.
He's got to pay for that.
Yeah. Well.
They don't get to keep those. I know that's a popular misconception. You get your jersey at the end of the season. You have to buy the jersey from the team. The equipment the team gives you, it's not for free. You do have to pay for that.
That's
stuff.
Insane, by the way.
It is kind of crazy.
That's
but
insane.
They just, you fill out the paperwork at the end of the season. You check the box. Do you want to keep your equipment or not? If yes, they take it out of your check. You don't even have to write a check. They just take it out of your game check.
I didn't know that,
Yeah,
actually.
the more you know. That's how it works.
Look at that. But yeah, I mean, Rempe is not going to become a better hockey player watching the game.
Nope.
Either he plays in the NHL to get better, or you send him down and he gets better in the AHL. Him watching, and as much as we love his personality, as much as he's a fun person to listen to, and I would have, from what I understand, is a very popular locker room guy. As great as all that is, he's not going to become a better hockey player on the ice if he just sits there and watches. So you have to send him out on some sheet of ice, whether that be here or down in Hartford.
Send him to Woolman Rink.
Play.
Send him to Central Park.
Sure. Have him go to Rockefeller in a couple of months when there's an ice rink out there. Have him skate there. Skate somewhere. Like, you got to go somewhere. He's got to play. Has to.
And remember everything we said 10 minutes ago about how the entire team is sloppy after not playing for 2.5 months? How hard do you think it is to play 3 minutes, not play for a week, go back in, play for 6 minutes, come out again, go back in for another 6 minutes 2 games later? You can't build any habits. You can't get into any kind of routine when you're a spot starter like this. This is okay if you're a Sam Carrick, if you're a Corey Perry. If you're 35 years old and you've been around the block and you know how to come in and out of the lineup, you know what you need to do to get ready, that's one thing. There's a reason the Rangers didn't bring Berard or Othman out of training camp, because those guys need to play. And I understand the expectations for Rempe versus those guys are very, very different, and that those guys are expected to be contributors offensively. They need to get special teams minutes, etc. But it's the same general principle here. The kid is not going to get better if he doesn't play. If he's on the roster and not playing, you're wasting that roster spot. Yeah. Give it to Brodzinski, send Rempe down. Brodzinski's been fine when you've played him. He's not going to light the world on fire, but he's a functional NHL player who deserves to be here. He's scored more than 15 goals in the AHL 4 times. Hell, Brodzinski had more points in the 20-some-odd games he played in the AHL last year than Rempe has in his life in the AHL. Brodzinski is an NHL caliber player. Rempe is to be determined. If the Rangers' expectation is to win a Stanley Cup, then we need to be doing whatever we can to facilitate that. That means icing the best roster possible or giving guys auditions to be able to figure that out. Now, we've spent way too much time talking about the fourth line on a team that's played all of 3 games, but when they've only played 3 games, there is not a ton to dissect here. The power play needs to get going, but that will come with time. Sure. Special teams is something that is very prone to hot and cold streaks, where all it takes is a goalie getting hot to spark a kill. All it takes is a trigger man to get hot to spark a power play. The kinks are being ironed out. I think once we get Lindgren back in the mix, we get VZ back in the mix, we'll get a significantly better understanding of what everyone's expecting here. Because right now, as we opened with, we're still figuring it out. It is the early stages here. They haven't played a lot of games. They've had a lot of days off. And until everything gets going, there are going to be questions. I like what I've seen so far. I think Lafreniere, Trocheck, and Panarin are right back where they were. I would like to see Panarin shoot a smidge more, but Lafreniere is scoring goals, so I don't think that matters necessarily. I think, like we talked about in our season preview, that's kind of going to balance out. I don't expect Panarin to score 49 goals again, but I do think Lafreniere and Trocheck will make up some of the difference. Yeah. Panarin's probably only going to score 35 this year, and those other 14 to 15 goals will get distributed throughout the lineup, whether it's guys on the power play or Lafreniere, Trocheck, or maybe a defenseman at 5-on-5. The one question I do have, and the one thing I want to figure out this year, if they continue to get good results from Schneider and Trouba, are they just going to keep them together? Or are we going to go back to what we've been doing for the last 4 years? And there's no way to know until Lindgren is healthy. And I frankly think, and we spent a lot of time talking about this on one of the episodes in, I want to say September, it might have been in August, the idea that you need to see what you have in K'Andre Miller. And the longer you kick that can down the road of, well, he likes playing with Trouba and Trouba likes playing with him, we're going to keep this together, you're bringing his ceiling down. The longer 100%. You wait to give him a real opportunity, because, the comparison I made 2 years ago, the one I made going into the playoffs last year, this is Jay Bouwmeester's size and skating ability. He doesn't play defense like Jay Bouwmeester because Miller just doesn't like hitting, but he's big and he's fast. Until the Rangers really take the shackles off and tell him, go for it, you're limiting what he can be. And he is a really talented player, but talent only gets you so far. And I think if the Rangers are going to break through, it comes from that back end. It comes from a discernible improvement on the back end, because the forward group, it kind of is what it is at this point. Like, unless we're giving Lafreniere a power play one time or we're going to ride him with Zibanejad and Kreider, I think the forwards more or less are what they are. There is more juice to squeeze out of this defense. And until they do that, I think we're going to be sitting here wondering, well, they're going to win 45 to 54 regular season games. How many of them can they win in convincing fashion? And how good do we feel about them going into the playoffs? Until then, we just got to wait.
I totally agree with what you're saying about Kendra Miller. It's one of those situations where I understand they like each other, Trouba and Miller. I'm that's great. I'm glad you have friends on the team. 3 separate head coaches have tried you as a pairing, and all 3 have failed. At a certain point, you got to not play that pairing again. And I would have to think that, like, maybe in January when there's a couple of bad defensive games in a row, we're going to see Trouba Miller again, just because, like, that's just that's how this goes. But that pairing doesn't play hockey well. When they are on the ice, the other team has the puck more. They have more offensive chances. The other team scores more. That should, it's an objective fact. Like, it's something that we've been harking about since.
So the one addendum I will say, in the regular season, their results have been pretty 50-50. In the playoffs, they have been bad. That's the one addendum I'll give.
Which is the most important stat. Like, when you're a team that's as playoff built as the Rangers are, yeah, regular season stats are important, and you want to win and you want to look good and you want to play well. But if you're getting destroyed in the playoffs because of X, Y, and Z, and you continue to roll out X, Y, and Z thinking, oh, this year it'll be different. Now it's different. Oh, well, these guys are friends, so it's fine. And then the same results happen again. I hate to be the bearer of bad news here, but that's kind of on you more than it is on anything else. So as much as I don't want to see Trouba Miller again on the ice, it will happen. It's not even an if, it's a when with that. I agree. Like, I think you are limiting Miller's ceiling when you do that, because Miller cannot go as hard as he can on either side of the ice when he has Trouba as his as his defensive pairing, especially. And I know Miller didn't have a great game against Utah, like, nobody really did. I mean, that it was a very defense optional kind of experience, as we talked about. But Miller can't use his whole tool bag in these kinds of situations, especially in playoff situations where he knows he can't. This has been a long running thing of, we've played for years together. I know what I can do, and I know what I can't do when my partner is on the ice with me in this particular situation. So when you keep doing that over the course of 82 games plus playoffs, and I know it's not 82, semantics, but K'Andre Miller is limited in the kind of things that he can try. And that's one of the key things too. When you have a player that is as enigmatic as K'Andre Miller is, for him to really get better and for him to really fundamentally understand the kinds of levels he can potentially accomplish, he has to try things. But when he plays with somebody that he knows he can't, he won't try things. And then if you prolong that for years at a time, not only does he not know if he can do these things, but he like that kind of thought starts to escape his mind. It's like, oh, I didn't even think about doing that because I've known for years that I can't.
The one other thing I will say to this that I do think I often forget to mention, when you play with Trouba, your responsibilities are different because of who you're getting deployed with at forward. When you're out there with Fox usually gets deployed with Panarin, and they try and tilt the ice as much as they can in those minutes, and the Rangers dominate those minutes because they have their 2 best skaters on the ice at the exact same time. When you've been out there with Trouba, you have been deployed most commonly with the Zibanejad-Kreider line, who, though they score a lot of goals, they don't really help a ton as far as possession. I know the Rangers win their minutes in terms of actual goals, but it is harder to play when you don't have possession. It is really straightforward and really simple. They win the minutes on goals because they have enough talent to mitigate the shooting, the possession gap. That's the conundrum here, because in the regular season, they play a lot of defense, that group, Zibanejad, Kreider, Trouba, Miller, historically over the last handful of seasons. And they win their minutes because they are able to break out Zibanejad, Kreider in transition. They score a lot of goals, and it mitigates the getting outshot the way they do. The problem with that, and the reason it hurts Miller in particular, is Trouba is profiled as an offensive defenseman, but the Rangers are asking him to be a defensive defenseman. And Miller, in turn, who probably skews a little more towards an offensive defenseman because he doesn't like to use his physicality, is forced to be a bit more of a defensive defenseman. And you are, because of the minutes you are asking them to play with the forwards you are against the quality of competition, you are defanging what makes Miller dangerous. Instead of him trying to skate the puck out of danger because he's a strong skater, he's getting it to Trouba, who's trying to outlet it to Zibanejad or Kreider so they can go from defense to offense. The Rangers probably never really scratched the surface of what Miller could have ultimately been because of the short-sightedness of his development and the way they've gone about it. He is a good hockey player. I think he's firmly above average. I think I would dare to say he's good, but I don't think good is good enough as the third best defenseman on a team that's going to win a Stanley Cup. You know, it's a real conundrum, but he is young enough where he can be better. And I want to see him and Fox really get a prolonged look. And if that means when Lindgren comes back, Lindgren's playing with Trouba, or Lindgren's playing on the third player with Zach Jones, whatever, I want to see what Miller does in minutes where the expectation is chance creation as opposed to holding on for dear life the way it has been the last few seasons.
It'd be nice. It's one of those questions that I would like to see answered by Laviolette in the coming weeks, because I like my fear is that Lindgren's going to come back in a week or 10 days or whatever it is. He's going to go right back with Fox. It's going to be Miller, Trouba again on the second pairing. It's going to be Jones and Schneider, and then off we go, doing the exact same things once again, expecting different results. And hopefully that doesn't happen. At least let's try new things. Like, it's October. It's October. You know, the team that you have in front of you is really good.
Unfortunately, teams don't do that. We spent the entirety of March and April knowing the Rangers were locked into a playoff spot, and Rempe played more than 10 minutes in a game once. Teams don't have foresight. It is maddening as people who this is how life works. The only way you get better at something is by doing it. And you got to give these guys opportunities to get better. When you kneecap them and force them, you box them in, you pigeonhole them, you cap their ceiling. It's frustrating.
I agree. We've talked about this for literally years now. Like, this is October. Everyone is still figuring themselves out. Everyone's still feeling each other out. Like, teams we're 10 days in the regular season minus the games in Europe between the Devils and the Sabres. Like, we're still, the season is 6 months long or 7 months or however long it is.
6.5.
Whatever it is, you started 6 minutes ago. Why don't you try some new things and see if it works? Okay, and if it doesn't, then you could always go back to the tried and true. Like, it's very strange to me that, and this isn't just a Rangers problem. Like, this is an overall hockey problem where teams just refuse to try new pairings, new lines, except for when things fail. You'll see a lot of line shuffling when the top six goes cold, or if there's a week of really bad defense. Then you see this wild shuffling that lasts for about 35 minutes in a game, and then you go back to the pairings that they used to work together. It's like, can we just get a little bit of runway, not just for us, but for the players, to see if this works? Why don't you just try it? Just see. That they play against Detroit tomorrow. It's going to be Cam Talbot and Jonathan Quick in net. Like, okay, well then just try Fox and Miller and just send them out for 25 minutes or 20 minutes. See if that works. Try new things. This is the beginning of the season where not everything is set in stone, and you have a runway to experiment with line combinations and new tactics. Try it now, because if you know that it works now, you can always redeploy it later, or give the new combinations a runway. If it doesn't work, then you go, okay, this lineup, this combination is not working. Why is it not working? Can we fix it? And if it's not fixable, okay, we're going to scratch it off and try another one. Why teams don't do more of that is I don't understand for the life of me.
So the counterpoint to that, and I just thought of this while you were talking, this is the person who's at work who does their job exactly to the letter and does not do anything more than the bare minimum because they don't get in trouble if they don't do anything more than the bare minimum. The Rangers know they're going to win a lot of games doing what they're doing already. Everything about their organizational philosophy, from the way they handled the offseason to the way the roster is constructed, is short-sighted. It is win as many games as possible, and based on that, we think we're going to be really good in the playoffs because we win a lot of regular season games playing this way. All we need is the right circumstances to break our way, and it is short-sighted, and it misses the forest. It misses the forest for the trees. But it's enough, man. The Rangers are going to win a lot of games this year playing this way with these pairs and these lines. So it's hard for someone like Laviolette, someone like Drury to look at the bigger picture because they're going to win a lot of games. And at the end of the day, you get shit canned. You go into your next interview, well, we won, 200 regular season games in 5 years. It just didn't work out for us in the playoffs. You can sell that. Laviolette's been selling that for a decade now, 15 years since he won his last Stanley Cup. So it'll get him through. If Drury ever gets fired, he'll be able to say, we went to 2 conference finals, we won a President's Trophy, I got a guy a Norris, I got a guy a Vezina, 100-point forward, Hart Trophy finalist multiple times. I did my job, the guys on the ice just didn't. And that's really the disconnect here, is the guys in the game are not inclined to think big, because thinking big can only get them in trouble. Playing it safe, that keeps you in a job for 15 years. That lets you be the Predators GM for 15 years, and then they only replace you because they have reached you're too old to do this full time anymore. That's the conundrum of it all, because hockey in particular does not reward risk takers. Sure, you could say, you can point to recent history, you point to Vegas, you point to Florida, Tampa Bay, as far as like burning assets being competitive. Those teams relatively conventional in their roster construction, high draft picks, talented players. But the Rangers are right there, and you're going to be hard-pressed to find somebody in the organization who thinks they're not right there, even though all evidence tells you they're probably a step below right there.
That's the thing that we have to ask ourselves, and people might listen to that and say, "Oh, how could you say that when
they're close, but they're not."
But yeah, that's the thing, is you can win as many regular season games as you want. No one is throwing a parade for you because you have the President's Trophy. No one is.
It's great. We got a banner for the President's Trophy and winning the Metro. Great.
Yeah, we put the banners up. Like, that's terrific.
Regular season champs again.
Right. Woo!
This isn't the Premier League. I don't care.
It doesn't, that doesn't matter. When you are the Rangers, a team that wants to win the Stanley Cup, and your ceiling is, or your rebuttal is, oh, but we won the President's Trophy. Okay. And then what happened? And then what happened was you found out that your system once again was not built for beating. Obviously, they won the Stanley Cup, the Panthers, but your system was not capable of beating the best of the best. That is what you've discovered in last year's run. So the Rangers being like, okay, well, actually, no, we didn't learn that. We're gonna get Riley Smith and we're gonna run it back. Actually, that's what we're going to do. And we're going to hope that the same experiment is going to yield to different results. Cool. Again, it's 3 games in the season.
It works, though. It sucks. Yeah. It sucks we have to do this in October, but the regular season doesn't matter.
It doesn't. It really when you're a team like the Rangers
that is this good, this talented.
Yes. Like, this isn't like a team.
This isn't Pittsburgh. This isn't Washington.
Exactly.
This isn't the Islanders. This isn't
a team that is fighting for a playoff spot.
If they're fighting for a playoff spot, something went very wrong.
Right. The Rangers are posturing. The Rangers are built like a team that is set for deep into the Stanley Cup playoffs. Right. So they're going to win a bunch of games. They're going to go, into April. Hopefully win the first round. Hopefully win the second round, etc. But you've discovered that your current system cannot get past that blockade come playoffs, which is the most important time of the year. All of these regular season games are great. President's Trophy, terrific. Gold star for your efforts. You get to the playoffs and you lose. You get to the playoffs, you lose. You get to the playoffs, you lose. What are you going to do that is going to change that? That is the fundamental question you have to ask yourself. It's 3 games in the season. We're still way a ways away from playoff conversations and all that. But the Rangers have to think that way, because if you're built the way the Rangers are with Stanley Cup aspirations, then the result of Game 7 or Game 16 doesn't matter to you, because you're building towards the playoffs. If you're building towards the playoffs, but you're playing the exact same way all 82 games without any changes, without trying to tinker and trying to figure out what works better and trying to see, oh, maybe this pairing works. Oh, maybe that line works. Oh, let's try this for a game. Let's see how that goes. Because if you do that and some things work, one, your playbook becomes bigger. You become much more like the other team can't predict what you're going to do as much, because when there's a million hours of tape of Miller Trouba, you know how to beat them. They're very beatable. Every team watches tape on everybody else. I'm not breaking any news here. This is how the NHL goes.
This is how professional sports work.
Yeah, this is how pro sports work. So when there's a million hours of tape of, Trouba's just gonna go pinch and Miller's gonna try to defend a 2-on-1, and this is how you beat them, and this is how you score a goal. You have to try other things to keep the other team destabilized. That is how you win a lot of the mind games. Pro sports is a lot of preparation. It's a lot of, especially in hockey, it's a lot of bounces, sure. But pro sports is also a lot of a mental game. And if you can destabilize your opponent and thinking, oh, you think we're going to send out Trouba Miller again? Nah. Check this out. And then you send out some wild pairing and it works for you come playoff time. And the other team can't prepare for it because you sent them out for like 3 games in February and it worked, but you didn't go back to it. And now they can't really counter you because there's not a whole lot of tape on it. Okay, well now you're cooking, because now that pairing is working. And now you got a whole new wrinkle in the system the other team wasn't prepared for. That's the whole thing that we're trying to argue here. And it's 3 games of the season. They play Detroit tomorrow. They play Toronto. It's October. If there's ever a time, especially for a team like the Rangers, to try new things and experiment with lineups, but just give them more than a shift, a period, right? Give them a game, give a couple games, see if it works, see if it goes well for them. This is what we've been arguing. It's October. If there's ever a time to do it, it's now. Try it now. Now.
You gonna buy the John Tavares amulet, by the way?
Yeah. I'll get. The Rangers
should get that. The Rangers should invest in one for each guy on the team if they really heal wounds. That seems pretty. Important for hockey.
Against
Ryan Lindgren needs that so badly. Oh, Imagine Ryan Lindgren if he didn't leave the game every other week. That'd be a scary hockey player.
No, actually, I think he's the only one that doesn't need it, because he heals so fast that he's out. I think
we're using heal very loosely.
I think the amulet is actually made of Ryan Lindgren's DNA. I think that's how that works.
Yeah, he's built different.
He is.
That'll do it for this week's show. Travel, life events prevented us from doing our normal Monday, but haven't missed a week in 2.5 seasons, so we're going to keep it on going. They got a few games between now and next Monday. We'll talk to you guys then. Before we get out of here, please subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts, on Apple or Spotify. Take a second, leave a 5-star review. On YouTube, we hit 600 subs, so thank you to everyone who's joining the journey as the season progresses. Hopefully, this will be an 8.5-month odyssey that goes into the end of June, and we will talk to you guys next Monday. Until then,
later.